Thank you. I think we're now breaking for lunch, and the next session will be the panel discussion, which Aslam will be facilitating at 13:45 AM.
Let's get to run the panel discussion. Before we kick off, I noticed a tweet from my publisher, Manning, who's giving us all 44% off on all ebooks, and including Agile books. So that's their discount code, AGA-FC-FTW. Took me a while to figure that one out. Agile Africa FTW. So it's very kind of them to do that. So take advantage of that. Welcome to the panel discussion. This was proposed by the gentleman right at the end, Mark Crow. Has Agile software development in South Africa delivered its promises? So starting from that end, it's Mark Crow, Martin Cornier, Don Eru, and Barry Meisler. I'm hoping we have a second microphone handy. Can we have a second microphone handy for the panelists, please? So I have to tell you that I'm not going to mention names, but at least two of the gentlemen here cornered me to try to get me to steer this panel discussion in a particular direction around things like, let us define Agile, and then let us define software development, and let's define, promise. It's okay. So I've asked them to leave all weapons at the front. And so, have you got a microphone? I'd like you to just introduce yourself very quickly. And with a little twist. So when you introduce yourself, imagine you're a hashtag, and what would your hashtag be? I told you I'm in charge. I'm not looking at you. You can pass the mic on. It's fine.
Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Mark Kroll. I'm a developer coach of driven software. We're still figuring out what that means. But I guess if I could describe myself as a hashtag, it would be, I have no idea.
Okay, cool.
I will take that hashtag, which is the... Okay, so my hashtag is his hashtag. I'm Martin Cornier, also a software developer coach, founder of Creative Systems, and I really don't know. Let's say long-lived agility, maybe. I don't know.
Hi, Don Eru. I don't have a useful title yet, as Aslam keeps on pointing out. So the best one I do have is I'm a consultant, independent one at that. I think my hashtag would be a hashtag hugger.
Hugger.
Hugger, yes.
Okay, so Barry Meisler, once was a software developer, now I'm a corporate refugee, having a great time at the JCFC. Hashtag, well, when I created my Twitter account, I named it AJBM, which is a story all of its own, I won't go into that. AJBM Twit. Perhaps the Twit is the suitable hashtag.
Thanks, everyone. So, in this panel discussion, I'm going to pose a couple of questions to the panel and just get their expert opinion and observations of what they've seen and felt and heard. And then we're going to open it up to you guys if you have any questions or take it from you as well. I think it's only fair. So we're talking about software development. Has it delivered on its promises? So I'm going to ding you guys out because I'm in charge of the time. So I'll ding you out. And you just have to pass the microphone on. That's power. So first thing I actually want to, I've been thinking, it's actually quite a difficult topic, this one. Has it delivered on its promises? We don't even know what the promises were, perhaps. What we mean by it's delivered on its promises, it's all about continuous improvement, etc. So I'd like just your own observation, having worked in the industry locally. In your opinion, roughly, not quantified, what's the ratio of success to failure for Agile adoption? More success or more failure? Oh, someone pick up the microphone and speak, and don't speak to me, please.
I think it depends. It depends on the scale of the companies from my observations. I think the larger the companies are, the more they have to undo to become more agile. The smaller the companies are, the more successful they become at adopting agility. The biggest large success we've seen is software dev companies of up to about 60 to 70, 80 developers. But after that, the success rates, from my experiences, are pretty much zero.
Like the statistics that I always used to look at is not specific to Agile, it's the more general Standish chaos report that reports on the success rate of projects in the IT industry. And over the years, there's really been very little improvement, even post the Agile excitement. So my verdict would be, it's a kind of a yes and no answer, because Agile doesn't seem to have been any less able to satisfy the expectations than the previous approaches, but also not anymore. So it's pretty much business as usual, I think.
So, I've seen Agile being extremely successful. And I think we're hitting the hype cycle in Agile. I think the guys that really, really understood Agile understood at a deeper level than most people we come across nowadays. So, at a value and principle level, the guys that get that really are performing and delivering value. But I think the majority of us, and it's human nature, we copy the practices. And as soon as we start doing that, the value that's being delivered is really low. In fact, I've actually seen a lot more damage done with organizations that just copy the practices without getting at a deeper level. They would probably be in a better place sticking with what they had before.
So, Mark, you mentioned the hype. So,
yeah.
If any one of you could share, what would you consider hype in the Agile space? Hype, so signal to noise ratio, right? What's noise? What's signal?
When I see hype in Agile, I think that some of the mistakes we make, just in typical organizations. So one of the things that for me is an indicator of hype is when you advertise that you need a person X. So, for want of a better word, let's say, okay, we're going Agile, so we need a bunch of Scrum Masters. And you stick at that level, so you don't really answer the question, well, why do we need these people? I see a lot of hype in that, and I start seeing people just getting hired because of their titles. There's a problem.
To build on that, I think the thing that we see a lot is companies adopting the processes for what those processes sell them. For saying this process will allow you to deliver more predictably and more. It comes with all of these promises of frequent, predictable, high-quality delivery. And companies frequently focus on these practices and processes as opposed to focusing on the values and the principles behind Agile. And for me, the hype is, as what Mark said, when you start hearing companies hiring for a certain process as opposed to for hiring for a certain set of results. I think,
Have both done. You have to take both microphones. Stereo.
You can speak stereo. Yeah, so I'm back to this what is Agile thing. So Agile to me is people over process, and every time I see process over people, that to me is a hype. Where yes, this process will fix all your people. That to me is a hype that needs to be stopped. Anything that sees the people are over the process, puts the people at the center of the thing, and says, yes, the people are awesome, they are amazing, they are smart, they can figure this out. That is Agile.
Fred Brooks helped us understand this This many years ago when he wrote his article, No Silver Bullet, Essence and Accidents of Software Engineering, where he was basically then already explaining that the essence of software engineering will always be a difficult challenge. No matter what approach we use, no matter what tools we throw at the problem, and probably what technologies. So, you know, for a moment, Agile, I think the hype is the new fashion that was announced, and suddenly people felt, here's the silver bullet, we will now suddenly tame the software challenge. Well, it didn't happen. Clearly there were some really good success stories. Obviously, always good teams will be able to succeed with Agile. But across the industry, the werewolf is still not dead. The challenge remains the same.
So the process where I've started becoming successful in adopting Agile was the moment I stopped trying to do a specific process. The moment I stopped trying to do Agile, right? That's the moment we started becoming successful in adopting Agile. And that's when we started seeing very large companies become successful. It is living up to those values. And that is the essence. My view is people say that waterfall is the antithesis of what Agile is, the complete polar opposite, and it isn't. The opposite is Big Bang, right? That's not Agile. If you had to choose a polar opposite of Agile, it would be non-Agile, inflexible. So if you have a process and you have an environment that doesn't allow you to flex, then you won't be Agile. So the places that we were successful is where we took the processes that people had, whether it was waterfall or unified process or spiral or some consulting company specific process. We started applying the values onto those and started retrospecting and trying to improve on trying to become successful. That's where we were successful in agility, is when we started focusing on the goal of becoming faster and better at software delivery.
So each of you have said the typical consultant's answer, it depends, right? So I'm going to ask you to go back and I'm going to force you to take a position here about where are we in South Africa in terms of the promise of agile software development, and lots of really great tips of what we should focus on, process, secondly to people, etc., focus on values and principles. So in your observation of working with many companies, what would you consider as the #1 contribution to failure in agile adoption?
For me, it's an overemphasis on the soft side of agile, so the soft skills, and then an underemphasis on the technical implication. So, for instance, it's great having a software development team that's going to have stand-ups and retrospectives and be able to change direction whenever they want. But if the code can't let them do that, they're failing. And if I look at the industry right now, I see this massive focus on the people side, which is important. It's a fundamental part of Agile, but it doesn't stop there. And for me, that's a problem. That's one of the areas where we're going to not realize the value it was meant to give.
Anyone else? You're not allowed to say it depends anymore.
I'm trying my best.
I agree with what he said, and I want to take it further and say that in our industry, and I've seen this locally, I've seen this internationally, there's a tool syndrome. People think we can buy a tool and have that tool installed in our environment and it will magically start solving our problems. And whether that tool is a process or a practice or physical software that we install, it doesn't solve the problems, and that's where we see the failures happen. It's people not trying to change their behavior, but just trying to say, well, on paper we'll start following a new process. But all that happens is that the process becomes a Frankenstein process, and that then it fails. And then people say, but the tool didn't work for us, but it actually didn't change the way you work. And yeah.
Okay, for me, the #1 contribution to failure is the inappropriate management governance approach to a situation that requires low ceremony governance, but management trying to force high ceremony onto it. So what I'm basically saying is organizations that do not have the flexibility to get their governance approach down to low ceremony will probably not succeed and will just contribute to wasted spend on attempts to be agile and eventually give the whole agile approach a bad name.
So I agree with all of that. The one thing that I also think people tend to underestimate quite a bit is this whole cost accounting mentality in a business. Every single time I think we're making progress, you're running up against somebody who says, yes, and where's my resource efficiency? Yes, and where's my budget? Yes, and prove to me with numbers. You have to change the accounting story first. Eddie Goldtrack back in the 80s said, if you could start thinking in terms of throughput accounting, you can start shifting the mindset and the conversations away from cost to actual value generation conversations. So I think that's one thing people don't think about way enough.
I picked up something here, you guys, and I want to be devil's advocate and a bit provocative here. So you guys are saying that process doesn't help us. The human side of things really should be de-emphasized and should focus a lot more on code. We should focus on throughput accounting. Tools don't really help us out here. I'm going to be even more provocative and say that task board with stickies is a low fidelity tool that cannot scale up. Craftsmanship and code quality is overrated and incurs more cost than delivery. The human aspects of people should be rated far higher than the code that we write, because people will live longer than code. And I'm wondering whether those things actually contribute to success or failure. And picking up on Gary's thing, amongst all of this, in many of the organizations that are being represented here, we have the umbrella body, call it management, exco, board meetings, geocos, some kind of body that actually controls money, time, etc. So I don't believe a single thing you guys said. Not one bit.
So I think you have a very good point, and I'd like to know what Martin thinks about it.
So, I'm sorry, you just looked up to your hashtag, I don't know, right?
Well, then I'll look up to mine, along with agility. Yeah, so where do you start? I'll pass it on to Donnie what I think about it.
Yeah, I feel sideswiped, that is okay. I'm actually not quite sure the point is that we're arguing, just all that we're saying is wrong, yes, and. This is thing that's always curious to me. You're saying, yes, we need to be agile, okay, and then company X is posting profits at like 100 million rand. Then I'm asking, what's your problem? You have profits with loads. So what are you trying to solve? So it's always the question is, what are you trying to solve right now? If you feel that you are an incumbent in the system and somebody's going to overtake you, now we can talk.
So Aslam, for me, what I've seen is I've seen a lot of organizations in pain, where they are so bogged down in not creating software that people hate their jobs. And that, for me, is the important thing. So there has to be balance in everything. Yes, you can overemphasize the whole craftsmanship side. You can overemphasize the importance of sticky notes, but those things often bring back the human element, and that's what we're lacking right now. Is we have this imbalance on the one side, and I think the fear is that we can actually have an imbalance on the other side as well. So it's more than likely that Agile Africa Conference is only going to last 5 years, because there's going to be the Nimble Conference or something coming along that's going to replace it, which is going to counter that movement and try and bring us more to the other side. And we're going to swing backwards and forwards.
So talking of Nimble is actually a trademark. Well, I'm launching a certifications for it quite soon. But on that, I think companies forget why software development teams exist. And that, to me, is the fundamental focus. Software development teams themselves forget why they exist. And they get so into, the tools are going to solve our problems, or the tools may not solve our problems, or, which tool is better, is it this tool or that tool, or which process is better. And people focus on, let's do this process really well. And if we do this process really well, we'll deliver working software. And it's just the focus is wrong. The focus should be on working together to deliver working software. And that's where we should measure ourselves. That's where we should look at whether or not the teams are successful. And the second part of that is that software should be valuable to the organization. So however you accomplish that, if you feel that physical passports or electronic passports work for you, then use that. If you feel that you can accomplish it using ISO 9000, use that, right? If that is the right thing for you. As that husband said earlier, that really resonated for me. If ISO 9000 generates a lot of gravity and it holds you back, then don't use it, right? So use tools that help you move forward in your environments and adapt to the changing conditions around you.
If one takes a bit of a historical perspective, the earliest days of the industry were sort of marked by two movements. On the one hand, there was the so-called code and fix approach, which was the 1960s Agile approach, I'm sure. And on the other hand, there was the follow the engineering approach, which says let's move through requirements, analysis, design, the way that we develop computer hardware. And that tension between those two approaches has been there throughout the industry. But when Agile really became essential was when there was business to be made, when there was money to be made by rapidly producing somewhat defective software. And, we all love it. I mean, I've just had 3 months of using my BlackBerry, I'll admit, where I couldn't connect to the Bluetooth in the car. Now I've installed an upgrade, now it connects again. So we all live with this reality that we have got defective software that we use that was produced probably too rapidly by people trying to meet market demand or find competitive advantage and so on. And the customers accept it. Customers say, it's okay, I'll wait for the next upgrade and then it'll work again. So what I'm trying to get to is that this issue of how do we get software engineering to work will probably always be in this state of one way versus the other. Sometimes the one works better, sometimes the other, until the market puts its foot down and says, we demand as close to zero defect as you can produce. And I think that will cause a revolutionary change. In fact, Larry Berman, in an article that he wrote at the end of the last century, he was basically saying that what we need in the industry is some catastrophic event, and he actually uses the 9/11 event in the United States as a sort of a simile, where he says some catastrophic event that sort of is such a shockwave throughout the world that people say so far and no further. We cannot tolerate the riskiness of the way that we have tackled software engineering in the past. We demand to get it right first time more often. That to me is the ultimate situation.
So I've been through the washer with Agile software development from having drunk the Kool-Aid of extreme programming years ago. Ran around like a rabid dog trying to get everyone to do it and start them and myself in the process. And in the process I've been fortunate enough with the people I've worked with to have worked with companies with long-running code bases, 7-10 years long, who've been through an Agile journey, who are not just starting out. And when I stand back and I look at a lot of these companies, they start off in chaos, and they found a way out of chaos through some kind of process, methodology, change of mindset, etc. They reached a plateau, but now I'm standing and looking at a lot of these companies, and I can see that it's actually not a plateau that they're on. And there is actually a gradual degrade, and I call it sprinting in mud, right? Where you're actually just treading and not going very far. But it's actually, I notice a decrease. I don't know if you share that sentiment, and if you do, I actually want to know from you guys, and advice to everyone here, what do you think is needed for lasting success? That goes beyond change of generations of people in companies, generation of EJV3 to I don't know what they do these days. So please go ahead.
It actually latches on to what I was just saying. In one little phrase, for lasting success, professional accountability. People must know that if they don't produce software that is actually according to the customer's needs and so on, that they can be sued, and that legal suit will actually lead to success on the part of the customer.
Change my answer a little bit.
No, we only get the first one.
Okay. So there's a couple of things that I want to jump into. This team that I'm referring to here is a team that does forex systems, specifically sort of like they have algorithmic trading, they have clearing and pricing systems within the environment. And in there, it's always in shift. It's about 5 to 8 teams that's working. Now, the one team in particular was interesting. They initially said to the governance of this big bank that they were working in, and if the people are from that team, just put your hand up if you are comfortable that I share the company's name. I don't see any of the people there.
I suggest no.
Yeah, then probably not. It's all good stuff. So, and anyway, so the team that we worked in went to the governance team originally, and we said, we're not going to live up to this paperwork that we have to fill in, the signatures that we have to put on paper, because that signature just says that I say that I did it. What we're rather going to do is we're going to build systems that generate proof that the systems are stable and bug-free. And the net effect of that was that in a 12-month cycle, the team had one single production bug in their systems. And it's probably the most agile team that I've seen. Now, what's fascinating about this team is, and that gets to the point that Aslam made, is this is now 3 years later. Our company has long since left the organization. They were very fortunate enough to have some really hardcore guys from overseas also working, Benjamin Mitchell being one of them, working with them and coaching them along their path. And what they've done was continuously getting in coaches into the environment to guide them along. And that's one of the things that they did to stop that sort of mud from impeding them. And sure, they impeded, and every time they impeded, they said, well, let's start with a clean slate and try our best to reverse what happened. So that was just one of the ways that the company did that. And I guess the answer on accountability is the teams that are successful in that environment are the people that hold themselves accountable, that say, we are proud of what we're creating there. The people that are failing in that environment are the people that actually just come there and do a job.
So the best way I've seen not to have bugs is not to release software.
Or not to test.
That said, we can't do that. That's not going to work. And the mindset I have is the teams that your process today is not necessarily going to be your process tomorrow. Even if the team stays the same, and most teams don't, they change. So people are coming in and going out. That knowledge in that team, so that the health of that team is changing continually. And even systems and the practices that you apply to a system change with time. So the only way that you can stop teams from getting into this lethargic kind of way forward is to have the process allow itself to change. And for me, that comes back to this idea of allowing teams to reflect, to look at themselves and look at their process and adjust it. And so be it. If they don't need to be agile, they should be able to see that and adjust their process. So for me, that's the thing that allows a team to keep that momentum. And if they don't do that, regardless of what process, so regardless of whether it's Kanban, Scrum, Waterfall, anything, you apply it long enough and your horse is going to die. Just won't carry on.
I'm going to open up to questions from you guys. I just saw a tweet there. It says, let go of accounting, question mark. Nope, money pays us all to live. No money, no software, no business. It's just all up. So what's your opinion of that? Yes, one person can answer. And then everyone else get your questions ready.
No, money makes the world go round and all those cliches. What I'm saying is how you account for how you want those money to be generated by the business, that's the conversation that needs to change. The fact that you worked 40 hours this week or 56 hours this week, way different conversation from did you get the work done.
So I just want to add to that I think think the accounting processes we use right now are flawed, and they're actively fighting against the way we want to write software. I know organizations out there that are planning years in advance, trying to put budgets, trying to project things that they can't project. And the whole purpose of that is they're trying to reduce risk. I mean, ultimately, we still need to know where the money's being spent, but the model that we're using to manage that money and to kind of put it in the right place, that's flawed. And until we change that, we're going to keep having this friction between how we want things to work in a software development environment and how the rest of the organization actually wants to interact with us. So if we want to get an organization and systems that can allow for change and allow for change rapidly, it has to be all-encompassing. It has to go just beyond. If you just contain it within the team, you're not going to succeed, because there are all these cross-cutting things that bring you back into check with the rest of the organization. So accounting, we're not saying throw accounting out, we're just saying the model that you're applying in accounting might not be the best model to the problem that you're trying to solve.
Questions? Questions from the audience?
Hi. I work for an organization that is trying to convert to Agile. And we've sort of tried to apply various methodologies, and everything I've heard today from everyone has been say, keep changing your process. But there's an incredible amount of resistance to that. People get tired of changing what they have to do. They just want to get on and do their jobs. And I don't see how it's practical to constantly be adopting a never-ending sequence of methodologies for every different project, because there's actually quite a bit of effort to get any methodology right. I mean, how do you get that? Do you ever stabilize? Do you stick with one for a while, then change every 2 years? I mean, this is the thing I'm always a bit confused about what I'm hearing. Everyone keeps saying be agile in your processes, keep changing your processes. But to me, a process is one of the hardest things to set up right and keep running smoothly.
So I'd like one response, so we can take more questions.
Can I get into that? For me, the reality is situational software engineering, which basically means that you have to adapt your approach to meet the characteristics of the situation. And therefore, organizations should spend less effort in trying to find the one approach that always works, and more effort into being adaptable so that they can actually modify their approach to be suitable to the reigning circumstances of a particular initiative.
Another question? Otherwise, I'm going to ask them questions.
Sorry, I've got a question. I don't need the mic. I read a report recently in which one of the institutions or a couple of countries that have used Agile for a number of years have defined what projects and what environments in which Agile is actually successful. There seems to be a ramp up in our country towards Agile right now. Have we taken learning from these other countries that have already implemented and have found out where it is applicable, where it isn't applicable, and are we using those successes or the areas that they propose are useful, agile, applicable environments, and are we rolling that out in our country, or are we going shotgun approach, promoting a solution that we're going to go and rediscover what other countries have discovered already?
So I'm just going to repeat that. So in a nutshell, are we listening to lessons learned from other parts of the world with real data points, or are we just ignoring that and running full steam ahead, trying to figure this out on our own? Someone grab a microphone. Self-organized, gentlemen.
So we're definitely learning. If I look at where a lot of organizations are, there's definitely this cross-pollination from other countries and other areas. Conferences like these are a great opportunity for cross-pollination to happen. We see a lot of visitors from overseas that are looking for new markets to sell Agile, for want of a better word. And that's not a bad thing. it's good to have those differences. The problem that you face is you can't just copy what other people are doing. So there has to be that deeper understanding. And where I see it go time and time again wrong is where an organization just copies the practices. So right, Agile means X, Y, Z. These are the ceremonies we do. There you go. Now you're Agile. 2-day course, well done. That doesn't mean that there's not value in those things, but organizations have to go through that learning as well. So you can't just buy that knowledge. You can maybe get a jump start with somebody who has a bit of experience, but you can't just go and take what's working in organization X, whether it's locally or internationally, and just apply it rote and see and get the same results. Does that answer it?
Anyone else with a question? Yes.
I don't know if everybody else is in the audience, but in every project that I have worked, there's kind of a directive timeline from something called a stakeholder or business. It's just something I've always felt is a constraint in working with Agile, and I don't know if you guys can share any wisdom or any experience in how to get around that.
So I'll just repeat that. So an external person, let's call this person a stakeholder, imposes a hard timeline that the rest of the delivery team needs to adhere and honor, and that is quite an onerous constraint. How do you work with that?
So I'll start off by saying that budgets are a part of life. Companies work on budgets and they allocate budgets for initiatives within those organizations. One of the most common sort of statements against Agile is that Agile is against fixed price projects. And I think, their personal opinion, there is a flaw in that it isn't against that. What it favors is it's failing early as opposed to failing late. Traditional approaches said we'll do an estimate and we'll only disprove that estimate at the end of the project. Agile says we'll do an estimate and we'll disprove that estimate as quickly as possible. And while we're at it, we'll continuously deliver the most important stuff right at the beginning. So we'll focus on getting the value early in the process. So when we fail with the lesser important stuff in the process. So I guess the short answer is we're not going to get away from doing estimates. And if you're lucky enough to work in an environment where the teams aren't reconstructed for every project, you can take your past learnings and use that empirical data as an input for your next initiatives. But if you're in an environment where the teams are recreated the whole time, that's going to be slightly harder. And then you'll have to disprove your estimates or prove your estimates early on.
One more question?
Oh, sorry. Can I answer that?
In 140 characters, yes.
140 characters.
I can pass that sentence.
Or pass.
Go for it.
So I think there are a couple of things. Time is important. And in fact, organizations make the time too long. It should be shorter, and Agile should be encouraging that. And then I agree with Martin what he said. There's this mindset that we treat these projects and we treat the people in those projects like these interchangeable resources. So we need 3 Java developers and whatever, and that's our budget and that's how we work, and that's fundamentally flawed. We're not these interchangeable cogs that can work. So time is very important for Agile to work, and in fact, if you don't set those timelines and those constraints, you're going to see very, very poor performance. But make it even more granular. Don't make it a 6-month timeline and a 6-month budget.
Okay, we might have time for just one more question before I wrap up. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I've got a question. So we're in Africa. Is there something that's particularly unique in our African culture that would actually make life better in adopting Agile? 140 characters and less, it must be treatable. Excluding your hashtag.
I must be careful how I answer this because, do we really understand what we mean when we say African culture? South Africa is a very multi-racial country. All I can say from some experience a few years ago, was that, and I must be careful not to say too much now, but basically this extremely, let's call it passionate, opportunity-seeking person made a statement that the combination of his marketing drive and ability to open up opportunities and the South African people that he had on his team who actually did what he said to the customer we were going to do, he said we formed an unbeatable team. And he was often astounded by the fact that we actually ended up delivering what he had promised. You know, he was more used to the experience of overselling and not merely being able to live up to the expectations. He said his South African experience had astounded him. And he sort of got a little bit cautious about what he promised because he knew we would deliver. You know, so he started to become a little bit less enthusiastic. Whether that's a general South African cultural reality, I can't say.
Anyone else have a closing thought on this?
Closing thoughts. Closing thoughts, good Agile with loads of empathy is about self-actualization as a professional anti-human. And that's something that we in Africa can definitely do with.
Just going to be
What he said.
I think for me, if I look at South Africa, diversity leads to a more robust solution, and that's important.
Just want to add to that. I've done a couple of projects overseas, and one thing that I found quite surprising when I was working, and I don't know if it's still the same, but when I did projects back then, people were hyper-specialized. You know, you had a person that only did like HTML development, and you had a person that only did a certain class of project management. And I think we, as a country, because we're quite small, there's a lot of diversity in our skill sets as well. And I think that actually is the essence of what a cross-functional team is all about. So I think we actually do end up doing, in some ways, Agile a lot easier than some of the international counterparts.
So I think we're reached about time. I just want to say from my side that having worked locally and abroad and had the privilege of working with a few of the Agile pioneers, the last discussion I had with Kent Beck was, you know what guys, this is just too damn difficult for us to do. You know, we've been trying to do this Agile software development for decades and we're still struggling. My take on that is that design is just really difficult. It's so hard to design. But comparing ourselves to the rest of the world, it's not, what we're experiencing is not abnormal. I think the ratio of success to failure is the same as being experienced in other parts of the world. We just keep on plugging at it, and the scars turn into really nice battle scars that you can show around and actually makes you better. There's a project I'm working on, which is a death march, and I said that's the best project to work on because it's like the best death march around. And it's not about the success or the failure, in my opinion. So, gentlemen, Mark, thank you for proposing the panel. Gentlemen, thank you very much. I hope you got something out of it. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Just a quick note that those of you who didn't get in early, Manning Books stores Tweet and are now offering 45% off all Agile ebooks and other books with that discount code for the conference.